Hello, everybody in Hockeyland. Welcome to the UFFS podcast, number five. Number five, I think, Larry, right? Number five.
You got it, episode 5.
Sometimes I forget where I am and even how many fingers on my hand I have, so I'm doing good today. We're again going to focus on all things UFHL today. On the agenda, some NHL talk. Why not? I mean, we're in the heat of it. UFHL happenings over the past couple of weeks and updates, including the draft lottery, the playoff draft, UFHL, NHL playoff pool, some scuttlebutt on there. I'm sure we're probably going to have some of that. So first of all, welcome, Larry. How are things?
Things are good. It's been a whirlwind week. Like you said, we've had, 4 or 5 events this week, and now we're into the scouting auctions. Our futures auction is underway as well. So it's been a nonstop go week, but very successful and a very exciting week for UFF Sports and for everybody involved in the UFHL community.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind just trying to keep up on things, and the great job you've been doing, Larry, heading a lot of this stuff up. I have a confession to make on the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. This is probably the most hockey, at least in the first round of NHL playoffs, that I have ever watched in my life, I think, Larry. And I do get heated up, especially if my team, like the Bruins are, if they're in it. I'll try and I'll get into it and get passionate towards, the semifinals or the finals. But in the first round, usually I'm just kind of catching the highlights. But man, I've been on my couch, Larry. I don't know if it's healthy, but I've been watching some hockey. And here's what I got to tell you. I don't remember, and maybe I'm wrong because I'm not as ingrained in this as a lot of people. But has there ever been so many overtime games and shorthanded goals scored? Like, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, there's been a ton of overtime games. Obviously, we had the 5 overtime game between Columbus and Tampa. Braden Point scored the winner. But yeah, it seems like every second game's going to overtime. And you're right, there's been the power plays haven't been clicking overly well in this first round. And we have seen quite a few shorthanded goals. So there's been a few interesting things that are maybe different from a standard playoffs year. And certainly playing with no fans and in the middle of summer is the biggest difference. And again, some people I think are watching more hockey and some people probably watching less. But good to hear you're watching more hockey despite all the sunshine in Manitoba and the fact we are in the heat of the summer.
Yeah, there has been a lot of sunshine. We finally got some rain. Really needed that, so I was happy to see that. But that was a great day to stay on the couch. And I think I'm probably watching more hockey because there's so much hockey on. One game ends, another one begins. And that kind of makes it easy, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, I guess normally they all kind of start in the evening during a standard playoffs. You have your doubleheader every night on CBC or Sportsnet or whatever the case. But now it's basically sun up to sundown. You can watch hockey. I know here in BC, the early games often start at 9 a.m. and then the late game tonight will be a 7:30 p.m. start. So literally from 9 a.m. till almost midnight, you can watch hockey. So it's you can certainly get your fill of playoff hockey if you want to be a couch potato.
Absolutely. So a bit of a lot of chatter on Twitter and different things with Tuukka Rask leaving the bubble. I think this is the first instance that this has happened. I don't know the details, and I don't think it's anything for you and I to try and guess what went on. But it's kind of interesting just to, impacts me being a Bruins fan. Obviously, I hate to see the number one goalie go, but I guess he's got his reasons, and you can't fault anybody for wanting to leave the bubble, whether it's personal or family reasons. I wonder if we'll see any more of this.
Yeah, especially, again, it's hard to fault somebody when we're in the middle of a pandemic. There's a lot of people who are very concerned about the pandemic side. And also, I know he's got 3 young kids, including a newborn at home. So sometimes it just comes down to some things are bigger than hockey. But certainly, I'm sure the Bruins are a little bit rattled by the fact that Tuukka Rask left. They're one of the favorites to go all the way again this year. They're defending Eastern Conference champions, went to the Stanley Cup final last year, and he was a big part of that run. So big loss for them, and especially the fact that at least publicly he's not injured and there's no huge emergency or life crisis going on at home that's been put out there by the Bruins or by Tuukka Rask. So it was more of a personal decision. And so he was the first one, and could there be more? There certainly could be more, but I think you're right. It raised eyebrows around the hockey world and certainly among the Bruins fan base.
Yeah, and I guess it adds credence to the importance of picking a backup goalie also in your draft in the UFHL, because you never know, right?
Yeah, whoever's got Yaroslav Halak is a happy man right now. If the Bruins go far, Halak's going to look like a good guy to have on the roster, as I guess now you're technically your number one goalie. If you think the Bruins are going far, you're going to ride Yaroslav Halak as far as they go. So that's no different than injuries, I guess. Things change. But yeah, definitely you want to have that second goalie. A lot of our franchises in the playoff draft actually only went with one goalie. So that was kind of an interesting strategy, because in the regular season, it's mandated that they have two goalies on their roster. But for the playoff draft, because you only have one starting goalie each day, the way Fantrax works for our league, for the UFHL, they only needed to have one in the playoff draft, and some didn't pick up a second one. And Yaroslav Halak is owned, but maybe somebody would have taken him earlier if they knew what was coming with Tuukka Rask.
Yeah, it's an interesting development. It's going to be fun to watch. They rallied, at least. They won the first game without Tuukka Rask, so I was happy to see that. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I think if I know the Bruins, they're a gritty team, and they know how to win. They'll play as they need to, and I think they'll rally. I think they'll be okay. But I was a little.
And Yaroslav Halak's no slouch. He's a veteran guy who's had a lot of success in the playoffs going back to his Montreal Canadiens days. But wherever he's been pretty successful in the playoffs, and he's had a good run for the Bruins. He's been a strong goaltender. He had comparable numbers to Rask even during the regular season this year. So I think it's obviously you lose one of your key guys, one of your impact players, but I think Yaroslav Halak is the kind of goaltender who can rise to the occasion and help them overcome this adversity.
So let's talk a little bit about the NHL UFHL playoff pool that we allowed all owners and scouts to enter into. I probably jinxed myself. I was kind of throwing you under the bus on the 2 Minute Tuesday because I was gloating a little bit how well I was doing just by luck. Interestingly enough, I picked teams I like. I picked teams that maybe are my daughter's favorite, and just kind of go with that mentality. And of course, in the UFHL, I might go with a logo I like, or because I kind of like how one of the owners picked certain players in a draft, just different things that I see, but no real knowledge of what's going on. But I feel like I'm starting to fall apart here, Larry. I don't know what's happening, but I'm not as confident so far. I can tell you that.
Yeah, with the 2 Minute Tuesday, I was getting pretty worried once we found out I'd have to run through the streets naked in Kelowna. That one didn't scare me as bad as the dunk tank in Saskatchewan in the middle of January. I think that one had me shaking in my boots, you can say. But certainly this round's early still. There's been a lot of series that are up 2-0 and the other team wins still. And it's a best of 7 now, not a best of 5. So you have times on your side to catch up yet. But some of your teams, you need to give them a pep talk and get them going. Like you said, rally some of those teams. But certainly, it'll be interesting to see where we stand after this round, because the points escalate each round. So the first round was all worth 2 points. This round's worth 3 points. Next round's worth 4 points, and all the way up to 6 points in the final round. The one thing you have going for you is you still have your 2 finalists and your bonus picks. You got your Bruins in the East, and you got St. Louis in the West, although they're down against Vancouver. But you got potential to have a Stanley Cup final matchup still. And both my cup prediction went out the window in the play-in round. I had Edmonton in the West and Pittsburgh in the East, and neither of them made it to the first round. So I won't be getting any of those nice bonus points that you might be getting.
Well, I'm a little concerned about my bonus points associated with St. Louis, because I do not like how they're playing, and the Canucks are just taking it to them. And if I had to make a prediction right now, St. Louis is done, I would say. I think the Canucks are going to take them.
Canucks are one of those teams that their power play is rolling, and that they seem to be getting a lot of power play chances, and they're converting a lot of them each game. So as long as that power play stays hot, I think Jordan Binnington doesn't look the way he looked in last year's playoffs. Kind of he came out of nowhere, last year, and had such a great run. The whole team did. They were in last place at the mid-season mark, and St. Louis went on this historical run to be champion, backstopped by Jordan Binnington. He doesn't look as strong, and I think Vancouver's power play has really stepped it up. So yeah, the vast majority of people still picked Boston this round. So picked St. Louis this round. So the few that picked Vancouver, I think could be getting some extra points, and that'll really shake up the standings going forward.
Yeah, I think Chicago is going to get swept. That's my daughter's favorite team. That's the only reason I picked them. And even though my brain was telling me to go with Vegas, so I think I'm done there. And yeah, Calgary, Dallas, that's a very good matchup. That's a really back and forth series. So I'm not sure what's going to happen there. But even I thought Philadelphia over the Habs. I thought the Habs are toast, but man, I'm worried there too. So I don't know. I think I might take a spill on some points this time, Larry.
Yeah, I have Philadelphia over Montreal in 5-2, and I'm worried about that as well, because I think that last game sure looked good for Montreal, and some of their young guys, Jesperi Kotkaniemi and Nick Suzuki, and some of these guys that maybe, well, Nick Suzuki had a good season, but Kotkaniemi was in the AHL most of the year, went home, obviously lifted a lot of weights and did a lot of training in Finland in this COVID off season, and came back. He left a boy, came back a man, and he's been matching up really well with guys like Claude Giroux and the Philadelphia Flyers centers. So I think that series is one of those ones that's surprising a lot of people. And you look up and down the list, there's the New York Islanders up 3-0 on Washington. I don't think, everybody knows Barry Trotz is a good coach, and everybody knows that Semyon Varlamov used to play for the Capitals. And there's a lot of tie-ins there between those two teams that the Islanders had a lot to prove in this series, even though they were the underdogs and Washington was the favorite. But the Islanders are up 3-0, and most people picked Washington. So it's going to be interesting to see where these standings sit at the end of next week, I guess, when these rounds are over in the UFHL NHL playoff pool.
Well, and I like Ovechkin, so that's why I picked Washington. But I did, in the back of my mind, consider the Trotz thing, and I think that clearly he's the key. So I think Washington's going down as well. So turning to the UFHL. There again, in the Allen Conference, I'm doing very, very poorly. My picks are not working out for me. I mean, we've got. I think I picked the Defenders over Dynasty there. I picked Dynasty, and Defenders are clearly in the lead in that matchup. Strong Island over the Battlehawks. Battlehawks, well, that's my pick to win the whole thing, the Klein Cup, and I don't know. That's going to be pretty disappointing. Tornadoes, the only thing that's working for me in the Allen Conference, actually, Larry.
Yeah, and that's the closest matchup overall is Tornadoes versus Power Players. That's the one that the points through 5 days that was the closest coming out of Saturday. So, but you look at that conference, you look at the entire Klein Cup playoffs right now. It's just kind of a quirk the way it's happened. But the top 8 seeds, the favorites in each matchup, are leading, and 6 out of the 8 are leading quite handily. So had you just went through and picked all the favorites based on the higher seeds from the regular season standings, those teams, obviously, the owners some of them had up to 17 spots to fill in their playoff draft, between 7 and 17 roster spots to get to 23. And those owners that had success in the initial draft in January and in the regular season have come to play again in the playoff draft and into the first round of the Klein Cup playoffs, because they're all ahead of the underdogs so far.
Let's in a minute, let's just talk about that playoff draft, because that's something that's very, very unique and not done in fantasy sports in the world, as far as I know it. But before that, one thing that UFFS and the UFHL tries to do is we really try to emulate the NHL as close as possible, whenever possible. And obviously they did their draft lottery, the NHL did, and right thereafter we did our draft lottery. And obviously we had Liz and Andrea Ellis that did a great job of doing their YouTube version of what they did, and of course it's on the YouTube channel for everyone to check out. But I'm looking forward to the, I guess, the entry auction and how that's all going to play out too.
Yeah, so the entry auction will be on October 10th, but you're right, the NHL did their draft lottery on Monday, and we followed it up an hour later. Andrea and Liz, the stars of the show, they're getting good and creative at coming up with different ways to do the lotteries. They've had to do 3 of them now, because they did the redraft lottery, the wild card lottery for the play-in round of the playoffs, and now they did the entry auction lottery was the most recent one, to determine the 5 franchises that will get to bid for Alexis Lafreniere in the entry auction. And obviously the New York Rangers were the big winner in the NHL. They'll have the opportunity to select Alexis Lafreniere on October 9th, will be the Friday. And then those 5 franchises, unless they trade their auction spot, will have a chance to bid on Alexis Lafreniere come that Saturday, October 10th. So it'll be the following day from the NHL, but that'll be another real exciting event for the UFHL, our inaugural entry auction, where the 31 franchise owners will be bidding on all of the first and second round draft picks from the NHL, the 2020 NHL draft class. So, and that's a real strong draft class, especially in the top 10, top 15 of the first round. I've scouted those kids all year. There's a ton of talent there, but certainly Alexis Lafreniere stands alone at the top as the consensus first overall pick, and I'm expecting we'll see quite the bidding war come the entry auction on October 10th.
I would think so. We have in the top 5 out of the draft lottery of the top, or sorry, I should say the bottom 15 teams that didn't make the Klein Cup playoffs. The Vengeance number 1, Outlaws number 2, Brutes number 3, Chilean Seabass number 4, and the Blades of Steel round out the top 5. So they're going to be competing for I guess the first pick, essentially, right?
Yeah, so they own those auction spots as of today. They are tradable assets, and I think 2 or 3 at least of those 5 franchises have said, hey, come at me, give me your best offer, and you can move up and have a chance to bid on Alexis Lafreniere. So it'll be interesting to see how many of those 5 end up actually participating in the auction for Lafreniere, and how many of those 5 trade their auction spot, and they can trade that for one of these top prospects that are coming out of the already drafted auction next week. You could do a package of prospects. You can trade for current players off the roster. There's obviously we just had the redraft as well as the initial draft. There's every NHL current player is basically on our platform, so they can put together packages of players and prospects, and they can also just, much like the NHL draft, you can trade down in that order. You can go down and bid on the 10th overall pick instead of the first overall pick, Alexis Lafreniere, and maybe you get him a little bit cheaper down there. You save some money and you get another asset or 2 thrown in. You get a prospect back or a current star player potentially, because again, Alexis Lafreniere is going to be a very valuable digital asset to own. And I think that whoever ends up in that top 5 for that bidding war, it's going to be pretty intense to see who really wants Alexis Lafreniere and how high they're willing to go in order to acquire him as a digital asset.
It's going to be really fun to watch, and this is why I was doing this with my fingers, because this is where the business side of things gets very intense. And on the business side of things, what we've seen in the past couple of weeks, we talked about the whirlwind of things that have happened, but we've seen quite the undertaking of staff hirings within franchise ownership groups. They've got general managers. They've even got, I think I've seen a couple assistant GMs or something going on, but they're really building this up as a serious business.
They are, and they're hiring, some of the franchise owners maybe come from more of a crypto background or purchase their franchises more as an investment and don't have the time to do the day-to-day roster management. So they were looking for general managers. And like you said, some of those general managers have hired wingmen now to be an assistant GM to just focus on scouting prospects, or you find us which prospects we should target for trades and kind of oversee the protected list while I do the active roster. And so you go up and down the list, but I think Rock Republic, franchise based in Newfoundland, really set the bar. Donnie Talks, their general manager, kind of heads up that group, but they have a co-ownership group that started off as 4 and has grown to 5. I know Donnie's mentioned they could grow as much as 7. They'd like to get up to 7 partners that sort of pool their resources as well as their brain power into running that franchise. And they all have delegated roles. So Donnie's the general manager. Paul Easton has branched off. He's doing a scouting service now, but all of the guys have a specific role. Their newest co-owner is going to look after marketing and sort of do a communication, social media marketing role for them as well. So they like I said, they've really delegated roles, and Rock Republic set the bar, and other franchises have followed. I know the Royals and the Gators were sort of the 2 in mid-July that announced they'd hired general managers and put out press releases and really, graphics and really made a professional presentation that, hey, look, we hired this general manager, and there was quotes in the press release in the article. So really professional the way they went about it. And I think that really opened everybody else's eyes. And since then, we've seen the Stallions, the Yetis, the Outlaws, and the Elite Assassins all have general managers. And I believe the Tornadoes are currently hiring or exploring the potential to hire a general manager as well. So you can say there's at least a half dozen franchises that have general managers in place out of the 31 UFHL franchises. And out of there, I think, like I said, Rock Republic has several people involved in different roles with different titles, but I know the Outlaws have a 2-man management group, as do the Royals. So the Royals and Outlaws have that assistant general manager thing going on already. So we're seeing it from top to bottom. It's becoming more serious, and people that maybe know that they're not at that level with fantasy hockey knowledge or following the NHL as closely, or like we said, simply don't have the time to oversee the daily lineup setting and fielding trade offers and everything else. They're bringing more people in to support them. And from an ownership standpoint, the ones that are going out and recruiting co-owners or investors or sponsors, they're building up their revenue to, or their purse, or however you want to say it. They're building up their wealth in order to acquire these prospects, and they're seeing how much some of these prospects are selling for and realizing, let's put together a group, and this is a small business essentially.
I love it. And you know what? With the UFF Sports inception, the idea was, how would you like to offer someone the ability to own a franchise like you do in the NHL, but you don't have $750 million kicking around? It's the same idea. So it's building up a business just like the NHL, but I mean, obviously not into the millions of dollars, but there is going to be some dollars there.
Yeah, and today maybe our franchises are budgeting around, let's just throw a number out, $7,500 or something. But, a year or two from now, and you never know who's going to get involved and how it's going to grow. But that you can keep adding zeros, and I don't think we'll get to 750 million, but maybe someday down the road it could be 75,000 or even 750,000. Like I said, the people that can't quite afford an NHL franchise or even a junior hockey franchise might see this as the next best thing, mainly because we've copied the NHL collective bargaining agreement straight over onto our platform. So everything you see in the NHL happens in the UFHL. And I think that's the real attractive thing for people that want to, almost own their own NHL franchise, because the operating side is very similar. And one thing we're seeing too is the branding. More and more franchises are hiring graphic designers and really upping. Rock Republic redesigned their logo because they realized, hey, we're going to sell some jerseys, we're going to sell some merch, and we want this to look even more professional than it already does. So I think as we go, almost every day we're seeing more and more franchises take it to the next level. So it's exciting, and the sky is the limit, I keep saying.
Well, I've said it before and I'll say it again, and maybe you agree with me, but I love some of these logos and the branding that's coming forward. But when the first UFHL franchise to get me a jersey with their logo on it, they'll be my new favorite. I will wear it. I will wear it on every podcast till I get something from somebody else. Sound good?
Awesome. That's awesome. And I know the store's coming. It's going to be launching. I don't want to say any day now, but any week now, there will be a store with merch available, for starting with obviously the UFF Sports brand, but all the owners and franchises will have their merch available there to advertise and sell on their own as well. So it's exciting. And going back to the roles and stuff, I mean, you look in the NHL, there's a lot of franchises that are owned by one person with really deep pockets. But there's also a lot of franchises that are owned by groups of people. So it's much the same here, is that the group mentality is a smart approach, because you won't get outbid if you got 7 or 8 guys putting equal amounts in. And I grew up watching the Edmonton Oilers and seeing them being a small market NHL team in the late 90s, being owned by a group of 30 owners. And then now you see they have a single owner in Daryl Cates, who spares no expense and really puts every penny he can into that product. But back then, they were losing free agents all the time and losing, I guess, like you would say, these bidding wars in auctions and stuff in free agency, because their group of owners or their individual owners didn't have that wealth. So there will be big market, small market franchises for sure. But to go to an ownership group, I think the saying, it takes a village, I think that applies to the UFHL to some degree too, is that if you want to be competitive long-term, you're going to want to expand your group and really see it as an investment, and like I said, as a small business.
Well, Larry, I think you hit the nail on the head. Expand the group. And the way I've seen this thing grow and expand from inception is that we have these unique aspects as well to the UFHL where we don't exactly mimic the NHL. And, we have the playoff draft, we have the scout auction, with all these things taking place. There's so many moving parts. You need a group. I think you need a group. I think you need different people in charge of different things. Otherwise, I don't know how people can keep up and work a day job, to be honest with you. So there's another piece where I think the group mentality really comes into play in this thing. So in that, we can probably talk about the playoff draft. This was a big one. This was really cool. And I just love the setup where you actually, if your franchise makes the Klein Cup playoffs, yeah, you're going to have some players that follow along with you, but you're going to have some players drop off. So you have some empty spots on your roster. And what a unique, innovative thing to be able to go and kind of, I don't know what the right word is, lease or rent a player from another franchise that is not in the Klein Cup playoffs. Talk about that a little bit. I thought this thing was just amazing to watch.
Yeah, that lease loan agreement is very exciting. And I did a playoff preview article you can find on the UFFsports.com website under the news section, where it shows obviously all the rosters that came out of the playoff draft, but also all the rosters or the players from the non-playoff franchises and who owns them. And you can see some of them have 3 or 4 players now playing for the same team in the Klein Cup playoffs. So, hey, they have a new favorite team in the UFHL too, and a franchise to cheer for. But just watching the playoff draft play out again, I hosted it on a video conference, and a majority of the 16 franchise owners were present, and they picked in a timely fashion, and they were very on the ball. You can tell it's a really serious professional group of owners, and it was a real fun event to host and real interesting to see, because some people loaded up on players from a certain team. If they thought Colorado was going to go far, they drafted 4 Colorado players in the first 4 rounds, and some went the exact opposite and picked the best player available regardless of what team. And so some people have Islanders and Columbus, and now those are looking pretty good all of a sudden too. So lots of different strategies and approaches, but it was a real fun event to host. And just like I said, a real unique, innovative way to transition from the regular season to the playoffs, and to have your playoffs be part of the NHL playoffs, because people do separate playoff drafts where you start from scratch and you pick players. Everybody does that, but nobody really carries over the regular season lineup to the playoffs in fantasy. And that's because normally most fantasy hockey leagues, keeper leagues, dynasty leagues, their playoffs are during the NHL regular season, where here our regular season in the UFHL runs right through game 82 of the NHL regular season, and our playoffs mirror the NHL playoffs thanks to this draft. So very cool concept, and I think people are excited to follow along, including the non-playoff franchises, to see how their players do. And hopefully, obviously, the Klein Cup champion will get a percentage of the purse, and then the other percentage of the purse will be distributed evenly through the roster. So every 23 players will take that portion of the purse back to their original franchise, which is where the lease loan agreement comes in. So everybody has a vested interest in the Klein Cup playoffs, and there'll be multiple teams that come away winners at the end. So it'll be a fun ride over the next couple months.
That's what I love about it. Just because you feel like you might be out, you're actually not out, and now you're back in when someone that's in the Klein Cup playoffs chooses some of your players. And you will potentially, if that franchise wins the Klein Cup, has your players on the team, you share in the winnings. And I just think it's brilliant. I love it. Very exciting.
It is a genius concept. And certainly we're looking at, possibly next season, it might not be like right now. We mirror the NHL. There's only one winner in the regular season and one winner in the playoffs. So our regular season champion, the Grizzlies, got the Founders Trophy and the associated payout. And then for the playoffs, it's just going to be the Klein Cup champion will be the lone payout, because in the NHL, you don't get any payout for being a conference finalist or Final Four. All you get is if you're the Stanley Cup champion, you're the champion. So that's the way it works right now with the Klein Cup. But going forward, we're certainly going to consider expanding those payouts. And then obviously, if your players are on the team that make it to the conference finals, you might get a little bit of a purse. So that will grow and expand and evolve as we go. But it's a unique and creative concept that nobody else is doing in fantasy. And I think our owners, some of them were a little skeptical about how it would work and why are we loaning our players. And once the playoff draft played out, I think everybody's excited and everybody has a vested interest in the Klein Cup playoffs, whether your franchise is still going or whether you were one of the 15 teams from the entry auction lottery that missed the playoffs. So everybody's paying attention, everybody's interested, and all systems go in the Klein playoffs, which are, I guess, halfway through the first round now.
Yeah, no, I think it's really cool. So I just want to remind everybody that if anyone did want to watch that playoff draft, it is on YouTube. And Larry, again, you did a fantastic job. So it is there for anyone to watch and see kind of what went down. So the other thing that is very unique to fantasy sports that I don't know of this anywhere else is the scout auction. And that kicked off August 15th, which was yesterday. And it bled into today. And I guess, what do you call it? Round one completed today. And that was interesting to see too. Actually it was mind blowing, Larry. It exceeded my expectations.
It exceeded my expectations too. I think it was very exciting to watch, and it's kind of been about 2 months in the making since we announced that there would be a futures auction, which is for the top 140 prospects from future NHL draft classes. So 2021, 2022, and 2023. So we saw guys like Atu Ratty, who's projected to be the first overall pick in 2021, or currently the front runner for that draft class. He was auctioned off today, and we had Shane Wright, who was the highest. He brought the biggest purse, or whatever you want to say. He was the highest selling prospect, was Shane Wright, but he's sort of the front runner, the favorite to be first overall in 2022. And people who follow prospects, they're starting to throw around the generational player label with him, which they had with Connor McDavid, and he could be better than Nathan McKinnon or Austin Matthews. So a guy like that is now already part of the UFF Sports platform, which nobody else has taken fantasy sports to that level to incorporate fantasy scouting. And like we said, it's been kind of 2 months in the making, and nobody knew what to expect going into that auction, how much scouts were willing to spend, which prospects they would target. Would only half the prospects end up selling? All 20 from the first day sold. So there's 20 prospects per day for 7 days of the futures auction, and then there'll be another 7 days with 20 prospects per day for the already drafted auction for the prospects who are a little bit older, who are drafted by NHL teams. So these prospect auctions are something that no other league, especially the futures, no other fantasy platform has incorporated scouting the way UFF Sports has, and starting with the UFHL, but it'll work the same with future leagues and future sports as we continue to expand and evolve. But certainly a ton of excitement today for everybody involved, because some of these prospects sold for more than entire franchises were selling for a couple months ago. So if you bought a franchise at that price, your franchise value just skyrocketed based on one prospect's value. So I think everybody involved in the UFHL community walks away a winner today based on how successful the initial auction was. And now we'll see how the next 13 days go.
Well, sometimes you have to be early in to be lucky. And I think that anyone that invested early and got the franchises at a steal of a deal, I mean, good for you, right? But now I think they can now see that they got an exceedingly great value in purchasing those franchises at those low prices. So it's interesting to see. What I see in the recap of August 15th is Spitfire Scouting, which is a scouting agency, had, what did they get? Five prospects, I guess they were able to acquire. 20 of the 20 prospects sold, and accounted for 89,000 score tokens overall. So it was a really good day. And I think the top bidding scouting agency was Prestige Worldwide. A pretty healthy bid. And I'm not actually sure who they picked up, but maybe Shane Wright. He was the top selling prospect.
Yeah, so it was actually really neat to see the way that recap worked out is actually, so the top selling prospect was Shane Wright. He actually went to High Level Scouting Agency, which was the Craig Button Scouting Agency. Craig Button is sort of the lead scout there, and they stepped up big and brought Shane Wright in as their first client. So High Level Scouting got Shane Wright, and then Prestige Worldwide was the scout that spent the most overall. They added, I believe, 4 or 5 prospects, including Scott Morrow and Callan Lind. Scott Morrow and Callan Lind were the 2 bidding wars that they won, where they went quite high, and they were determined to get Scott Morrow and Callan Lind. So those will be kind of the initial faces of the franchise, if you want to say, for the Prestige Worldwide Scouting Agency. And then for most prospects in the day, I think Prestige Worldwide had 4, but Spitfire Scouting spent less money, looked for some bargains, bought some guys that were maybe undervalued or overlooked by some of the other agencies, but they came away with 5 prospects. So you look at the 3 different categories that we're sort of tracking, as far as the top selling individual prospect, the most score tokens spent, or the most highest bidding overall total for the scouting agencies, and then also the agency that comes away with the most prospects. And it was really cool that on day 1, those 3 categories went to 3 different scouting agencies. So with High Level Scouting getting Shane Wright, Prestige Worldwide getting 4 prospects, including Scott Morrow and Callan Lind as quite expensive prospects or high-priced prospects, and then still seeing Spitfire Scouting come away with the most prospects of anyone. So it was really neat, because some days there'll probably be a sweep where the highest selling prospect is also the highest grossing agency, as well as perhaps they buy the most prospects. But it wasn't dominated by just one scout or one scouting agency. Everybody pretty much got a share in the action, which was really good to see, and just an all-around successful, great launch for fantasy scouting with the UFHL and UFF Sports.
Yeah, it was, really exciting to watch. So good times ahead, I think, in the next few days here as this thing plays out and we auction off the rest of the prospects. So important dates coming up here in the future in the UFHL. We have the already drafted draft coming up following the scouting auction, correct?
Yeah, so we have the futures auction runs through the rest of this week, or through to Friday, August 21st. And then on Saturday, August 22nd, the already drafted auction starts, which will feature a number of first-round NHL draft picks from recent years, because most of the UFHL franchises hadn't started filling out their protected list. They each have all 31 franchises have 27 spots on the protected list for prospects. And so we have 140 of the best prospects in the NHL that are drafted or signed, and they're going to be auctioned off. The scouts will be involved there, as well as all 31 franchise owners. So there'll be a 40-plus bidder pool there for those 140 prospects. So we'll see some intense bidding wars in the already drafted auction, which then leads into the open market on September 1st for scouts only, where they can register any of these prospects that weren't included in these two auctions, the futures and the already drafted, because in total there's 280 prospects in between the two auctions. There's also 20 prospects that are on protected lists. So you can say 300 prospects in the hockey world are currently going to be owned at the end of August 28th, at the end of that already drafted auction, but that's only 300. I know my personal rankings just for one draft year are about 1,200. So, I mean, there's thousands of worthy prospects out there in the world, and the scouts are going to grab those guys off the open market starting September 1st. So that'll be exciting to see who they have targeted there. And the nice thing about the open market is it's not an auction. So right now in the auction, you might see some of these bigger market agencies, and the agencies maybe financially out muscling some of the independent scouts. But come the open market, it's the best scouts are going to shine there, because it's first come, first serve. It's a finders keepers thing. Everybody pays the same flat rate. Whoever submits their prospect first gets that prospect. So it's going to be a really unique way of going about it again. And I think all these scouts are going to do well. I think the open market will be a gold mine, because there's going to be some of those kids that I overlooked for these auctions that are going to be registered on the open market for that flat rate, and their value is going to skyrocket in the years to come, and they might end up being worth, for a low rate, might be worth more than some of these perceived top prospects are going for in these auctions. So it'll be fun to watch over the next few weeks, as well as years down the road, when these young prospects are finally brought into the NHL and into the UFHL.
It's going to be exciting. And like I said, so many moving parts, and that's why you need a team, I think, around your franchise just to be able to keep up. And I don't know how you keep up, Larry. And the other thing, I don't know if I believe you. Do you really overlook anything? I don't think you'll overlook anybody. Do you?
I have second thoughts, put it that way. There's about a handful of guys I'm working on my personal 2021 NHL draft rankings for next year's draft, and there's a half dozen kids that I have maybe in my top 75 now that aren't as part of this futures auction, and we have 95 prospects from the 2021 draft in the futures auction. So somewhere in there, I overlooked 6 guys, including a couple of guys from the Western Hockey League where I scout closest. So I'm feeling a bit of shame about not having those two there. I won't name drop them. I'm interested to see which scout's paying attention and who's the first to register those two kids on the open market, because there are two kids who had a pretty strong draft -1 season this past year in the WHL who probably deserve to be in the futures auction, and I did overlook them. So we'll see which scouts are on the ball and who comes getting those two kids, as well as, like I said, a handful of others on the open market. But even then, the kids that I think are going to be the next big thing, a lot changes from month to month once junior hockey starts again, and there will always be steals and there will always be late bloomers available on the open market. And like I said, I think that'll be a gold mine for the scouts that really track who's available and put a lot of time and effort into registering prospects through the open market.
Okay, fair enough, Larry. So you're not perfect. I can live with that for a couple of weeks, I guess. Which gets back into our pro versus rookie picks. I'm going to end with this. I have to root for St. Louis because I picked them, although I am a Boston Bruins fan at heart. I did pick Boston against St. Louis, and I'm really nervous about St. Louis. That's in the NHL. Larry, your picks are already gone, so you're just going for the in-round winners. That's who you got to go for in that. I'm rooting in the UFHL for the Grizzlies as the Legends champ, and the Battlehawks and the Allen as the Allen Championship, and Battlehawks. I think their days are numbered, and I picked them to win the Klein Cup too. So this is going to get pretty interesting at the end. I still have to try and think of what I need you to do if you lose, but I'm starting to wonder if you're not going to lose. I was thinking the polar dip plunge probably out there in BC in the middle of winter might be a good one too, but we'll keep thinking on this, Larry. And I might have to keep my mouth shut here pretty soon as you start to kick my butt. But Serge Beauchesne is still leading this, isn't he? Until we get through this next round, he's number one.
Yeah, Serge Beauchesne. The Battlehawks are having a good run. They advanced in the play-in round in the playoffs, prevailed there, and Serge Beauchesne had the top. He's leading overall at a 23 entrance in the UFHL NHL playoff pool. He's topping the standings, and you're tied for second. I know we don't count in the standings, but you're not too far behind Serge. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the next round. But yeah, for me in the UFHL, because like you said, my NHL picks, the ship has sailed on Edmonton and Pittsburgh. So I won't be getting any bonus picks there. But in the UFHL, I went with the Monarchs as the Legends champion. If you're following the UFHL, that's the Team Tampa Bay Lightning. They have 9 players out of their 23 are from the Tampa Bay Lightning. So if Tampa goes deep in the playoffs, they have their hands full with Columbus right now. But if Tampa gets past Columbus and goes deep, I think the Monarchs are going to be one of the teams to beat if Tampa gets into the Final Four. And for my Allen champ, who I also have as the Klein Cup champ, I took Strong Island, who Brandon Broderick's franchise, he drafted Alex Ovechkin, was his first pick in the playoff draft, I believe 3rd overall. So that, with Washington down 3-0 to the Islanders, he might be losing Alex Ovechkin fairly early. So that pick might not look too strong for me by the end of next week when we retally the points and we see whose champions are still alive there. But I have Strong Island over the Monarchs in the UFHL in my Klein Cup final. So we'll see how it plays out, but we'll know a lot more how this is going to look 2 weeks from now.
Well, I think what's cool about this is just another added feature for the owners and scouts to get involved and do some fun things within the UFF Sports, UFHL platform, and just fun pools like this. And I'm sure there'll be more innovative things to come. So it's just a lot of fun to watch and keep track of. So I want to thank you, Larry, for joining me again today on podcast episode number 5. We're going to get back to laying on the couch and hockey. We'll see how things go. And I want to thank you to anyone that tuned in to check out our podcast as well. And you can find us in many different places. Larry's done a fantastic job of putting a lot of great articles. You'll find them on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram, Telegram. We have the YouTube channel for everything that we've done live or pre-recorded, all the drafts, everything's there. You've got articles, I think, all over the place, but mostly Twitter, Telegram, Larry, and on the website, right? Website as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, on the website, there's a news section, and that's got all our press releases going back to the beginning of June. And one cool thing you can click on the website is the upcoming schedule. And that actually, I'm updating it as we go, so you can see all the events in order there after they played out. I put in the YouTube video. I put in, update the results there. So it's kind of cool to see how far we've come in such a short amount of time from the start of June to now, I guess, mid-August. There's been a lot of events. There's been a lot of excitement. And certainly with the start of this futures auction and the launch of the fantasy scouting. And like I said, we still have the UFHL NHL playoff pool. Obviously, the Klein Cup playoffs are a huge factor, and the playoff draft. So I think there's just so many things to be excited about when you look at the UFHL as a whole. And for me right now, a lot of my focus is on the futures auction and sort of seeing how the scouting's working. And I didn't get to watch too much hockey today. I'm going to hopefully see a little bit before bed yet. But certainly there's no shortage of excitement throughout the UFHL with all the events we had in the past. And of course, having an auction every day for prospects between now and August 28th, and then the open market on September 1st, while the playoffs are still running. So it's excitement nonstop in the UFHL, and it's going to be a great couple weeks to come.
Yeah, it's very exciting. So everybody check out the website, and I think it'll take you to links everywhere from that point. And we're out there everywhere, lots of information. So I want to tell everybody to stay out there. That's out there, stay safe, enjoy the playoffs, like I am, and like Larry wants to. And this is Darren Bates and Larry Fisher signing off with UFF Sports, where you own the game.